Welcome to the Artist Studio. I'm Michael and I'm a reference associate here at the Ritter Public Library. Today we'll be speaking with Kim Haney. She is an artist from Amherst who works in different mediums and specializes in using recycled materials. Kim, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for asking me, to interview. Also, thank you for calling me an artist. I've never thought of myself as that. I always think like a creative engineer. I love a creative challenge. I enjoy that the most. I'll see something or I hear of a contest and my mom is my partner in crime. And my dad is as well. And I must give props to my in-laws. So I've got a great support. And I try to come up with a plan. I try and think outside of the box. I have fun with it. It's my mindful activity. It helps me kind of, it's relaxing to me. And some people say, why do you spend all that time, combing the beaches for plastic and then trying to figure out what to do with it? And I'll be like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? It's fun.
It's good for the environment and you're creating and
absolutely. Recycled clothing, pulling plastics out and just, I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Well, I'm going to show off some of the pictures that you sent to us. You sent us a lot of different pictures. You create in all sorts of different ways. So it's really interesting to see what you've done.
I do. I think, once I kind of, and I use the term master something very loosely, but once I kind of figure something out, then I'm like, okay, check. You move on to the next thing.
Something else.
And then I'm like, okay, check. And then I find myself, maybe I'll circle back and do things. But I have a really fun group of art and craft friends. We started a Facebook group called La Di Da. And like I told you, it's kind of like book club, but art club with wine. And we post challenges on each other all the time. And so that's been a fun group too, as far as participating in those activities.
Yeah. Well, let me show off one of the first pictures here. So you sent us two images, different ones that you've made.
Yeah.
So you want to tell us a little bit about these?
Sure. When my children were small, fairy gardens were just kind of starting to and my daughter's 20 now and my son's 17. So fairy gardens were kind of making their, they weren't real popular yet, but it was hard to find things to make a fairy garden out of. And we tried the sandbox thing with the kids and that didn't work really well for whatever reason. So I started just creating little fairy gardens for my daughter and then dinosaur gardens for my son. And then it just kind of they got too old and I kept playing still. And so it's even this where you're looking at it, like each year I'll pick something to do. So like this was like 2 years in a row, I picked obviously themed glass. I went to the Goodwills or thrift shops or, went down the basement, anything we weren't using. I went with a theme color. So this is like Wizard of Oz. This was my Emerald City. And then I'm like, ooh, the blue was pretty. And I did that the next year. And right now I have built in that area a Day of the Dead shrine that I made out of natural bricks. And I've got skeletons hanging from it and very Mexican. I love the Day of the Dead festival. That to me, it's beautiful and it's artistic and the shrines are absolutely stunning. So that's what's there now. So pretty much every year it's a different space that I create color. I love color. My thing is color.
Yeah, that's definitely noticeable when looking at the pictures that you sent. So next thing I'm going to share some of the furniture that you sent us.
Oh, my yeah.
So here's the color that you mentioned.
There's the color. Yeah. So I could not do this without my father-in-law, Doug Haney. So I make a point of finding each summer, at the beginning of the summer, I find an old wooden desk and it has to be the kind that has desks on each side. And I think I may have shared with you like what it looks like beforehand. And I say pretty please with sugar on it to my father-in-law. And I tear it apart. So I do the demo. Like I love tearing it apart. I get my mallet and the crowbar and I'm hammering it and, make it a heck of a mess. And then I say, could you please stack them on top for me? And then he does. And then I just go bananas. I just use, and I'll have a goal. Sometimes like I'm only allowed to use like 5 colors or I'm only allowed to use colors that are cool. or only allowed to use blues. Like the one I shared with you is a blue one, but I shared you a picture of a blue bird. So like I saw a picture of that blue bird and I'm like, I want to do furniture that looks like that blue bird. So I come up with a goal or a challenge, and then I go with it. So these are fun. These are all over my house. These are in my class. Yeah, that's another one. I forgot to put the drawer in it because these are pictures from, whatever. So this was another one. I forget what my goal on this one. Oh, I think I had all these little bits of paint, like little tiny leftovers of paint in my acrylics. And I'm like, I'm going to use up all the little pieces and parts. And so that's what I got.
So
little tiny pieces and parts.
Do you kind of use different colors and then sand it down, or?
Yeah, you got it. I just take the paint and I turn it upside down and I just swirl it. I have no idea where it's going. And excuse me. And then I just take a dry brush and I just start brushing. And I don't know where it goes. Let it dry, and then I sand it. And I'm like, okay, do I like it? Nope, I don't like it. Gonna try another, and I just keep going at it. And then until it gets to that end point where I'm like, I like it. This is good.
And how long have you been
for the handles?
How long have you been working on art? You've been doing it your entire life? Is it something you recently picked up?
My entire life. Oh, absolutely. My entire life. Yeah. My mom, I grew up with my mom painting. My mom's a fantastic artist. She can paint it's like realism. Like she'll paint, it looks like what it is. And I grew up, little kid, and mom would have all her slates on the kitchen table and she would be painting and she would sell them. And she was a stay-at-home mom, and it was like that extra income and everything. My grandfather was an art, a woodworker. It was just something in our house that our family, we were photographers. We used our photography for art. So I grew up with it, and it's kind of cool because I'm seeing my son kind of take on some things where he'll find things, out hiking, and he's like, I brought this home. I brought this amazing stick home. And we're like, that's an amazing stick. And then we want to do something with it. So I'm starting to see him kind of take on some of habits, good or bad, but they're it's genetic or nature and nurture. I don't know.
And what made you start using recycled materials in a lot of your art?
I think I've always been a thrifter. Since I was a kid, I would always, I don't know if you're old enough to know Molly Ringwald and Pretty in Pink and all those shows, and they would always reset, she would always have the thrift look, and that's kind of the look I always had as a teenager. And I just would cut my clothes, dye my clothes. So honestly, probably since I've never, thought twice about walking into a Goodwill or thrift shop ever my whole life, and see something, how can you give it new life? And that my parents were the same way. You know what I mean? It's just something I think you're just like, how can we reupholster that? Or we can paint it, we can make that, we don't need to buy one, we can make one. So it was just kind of, I would say, again, nature and nurture, combination of both. Ever since I can remember, I've always done things that way. But I will say, to back up, the recycling with the fashion shows that I did, and like the Driftwood challenge, that certainly brought it back to life, like making art out of it. So I was very happy that they did that. They had those challenges.
I'm going to show another one of your pictures here. Now, is this digital painting?
So what I love to, I draw, and I'm not great at it. And I'm first person to tell you that. I have my favorite kind of pens. And I'm a yoga instructor, and I'm also, I teach fitness classes and things like that. So I love creative movement. And so this is where I take my drawing and painting, and then I love photo apps. I'm a nut about them because I just think it's a whole new age way to add more to what, to your drawings. And so I drew this, and it's just plain, white paper and black and red pen. And then I'm like, I take a picture of it, and then I just, and some apps are automatic, like you click, like Prism is, you click whatever and it does whatever. Some of them you can have more control over. And again, I'm not really super techie, but I do have, to me, it's again, relaxing. Like, oh, what's this going to look like? Oh, what's this one going to look like? Oh, I love that green. I love the blue. And just having, again, fun with it. Not, I know I'm using a photo app. I know it's not me coloring it all the time, but it's still pretty striking,
Yeah, yeah, it's a really unique looking design and drawing. And again, just shows you create in all sorts of different ways. And speaking of which, I'm going to show another different style you work in. Some jewelry you sent us.
Oh, yeah, those were just some fun things. I just kind of, again, kind of recycling and odds and ends and pieces. And this was just I love fabric. In fact, the art group I'm in, we're doing these little mini art fabric challenge that we have. It's like little mini prayer flags we're making. And Barge, we're having another challenge. And I love sewing. But again, I'm not a good... Again, my mother-in-law, the people who are quilters would like roll their eyes at me. Okay. And and I'm cool with that because I'm like, like when I'm sewing, I'm just like zipping around, having a good time and layering fabrics and kind of like collaging with fabrics, collaging with anything I can grab and sew. I'll sew paper onto fabric. I'll sew string onto fabric, whatever, driftwood, little pieces of driftwood onto fabric, and then just to have fun with it. So yeah, that's another piece.
And then the last one I'm going to show here is a statue you made.
Ooh.
That was on display in one of the Vermilion shows.
Oh, her. Yeah, yep. She's a sassy little thing. Yeah, in fact, she is recycled. Well, some of her was recycled from what I did the year before. I made like a big Lake Erie monster. And so, what am I going to do with this giant 10-foot plastic fish? I'm like, okay. So it was in my garden for a while. And then I went out and I said, I want to make a person. And so I again found more things. And then those two pieces of driftwood were like perfectly angled to look like arms. And yes, I mean, I couldn't have got, now mind you, I walk the beach a lot, even this time of year. I take my dogs and we just go. And to me, it's very calming. Again, I love to exercise and I love seeing nature doing her thing. And so I put her together and she now has a home in, cause again, what am I gonna do with her? And I keep a lot of my stuff, but I took her to a friend of mine has, it's called Box Jute Joint Barn, and it's in Vermilion, actually. They are very artistic. I mean, if you want to interview people who are artsy, it's phenomenal. They're one of the #1 Airbnb in the state. And so I was talking to Stacy and I said, I don't know how I go, I got this girl. Do you want her? Because it'd be the kind of art that they have in their barn. So she now has a permanent place at Box Jute Joint in Vermilion. Again, #1 creative Airbnb in the state. And so she lives on. She's living on. She's not going to get deconstructed and turn into another project.
And the plastic they use, did you find a lot of that?
Oh, all that's from the beach.
Okay.
Every single piece of that was from the beach. And I think we're also tuned into finding lake glass and that type of thing. Well, folks, take a bag and pick up plastic and make something with it. I've got all sorts of sun catchers and wind chimes that I make with the plastic and the driftwood and the shells. And so they're beautiful colors. They really are pretty. I just wish they weren't all over the beach. So it's really unique and cool, but it's also a little depressing. Well, essentially lake glass is pollution too. I mean, essentially it's pretty, but so I'm just like, I would like literally, when I started doing it a couple of years ago when I did the recycled runway contest and for the Erie Conservation Group, and I made all these outfits with plastic. And I think I sent you a couple of the pictures of those. Yeah. Those are all made of stuff that I picked up off the beach. Yeah. So how many pounds I picked up, I don't know. And I could have picked up more. I still do. When I go up there, I'll grab my bag and I'll throw a few pieces. And again, thinking ahead, what do I want to make? So.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. And you've definitely shown us a lot of different ways people can create art, but also do some good for the environment too.
That's right. Very much so. Well, thank you very much for touching base with me, and have a great afternoon.